Welcome to the Women in Wealth podcast, brought to you by Regina McCann-Hess, a certified financial planner with over 2 decades of experience. This show is for professional women who want guidance in working towards their retirement vision in learning, building, planning, striving for your dreams, and putting the work in now so that you can pursue your financial independence. Hello, I'm Regina McCann-Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management, and welcome to our Women in Wealth series. Today, I have a new friend with me. And Lindsay, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and what you love about what you do?
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be on here and share my story. I love your podcast. Like I said, like you said, my name's Lindsay Davis. I'm CEO and co-founder of Spartan Invest. Outside of work, I'm a wife, a mother of 3. I have an 18-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 9-year-old. So I have a lot of free time. If you don't know, if you've got kids, you absolutely understand that. Professionally, Spartan Invest is a full service turnkey company. We are based out of Birmingham, Alabama, if you couldn't tell from my very thick Southern accent. But we work all in the Southeast. So we sell properties in Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee. And when I say full service, just to kind of, if you're not familiar with the term full service turnkey, I'll dive a little bit into that. And that what we do is we target markets that make sense when real estate investing, meaning that the rate of return is high for investor clients. So we'll go buy the properties, renovate them, and then sell them to investor clients all over the country and all over the world. And then we also have a property management company it's a separate company, but it's owned by similar owners. We're all in the same building, and we manage the property for you as well. So really it is a one-stop shop to investing in single family homes. And why I love that is because we are essentially selling time. We are selling the ability to diversify people's portfolios, their plan for retirement, save for college funds, prepare to, leave their W-2 to go pursue something that they would rather, not necessarily retire, but maybe just kind of build a nest egg or generate some passive income. And what we do just allows people the opportunity to do more of what they want and what they feel is more important. So that is the biggest thing that I love about what we do at Spartan is we just give people time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love the markets that you're in because there's so many people moving there. Like
Yes.
everyone wants to go somewhere south or southwest. And, it's especially us people up in the Northeast where right now it's starting to get really cold and we start daydreaming about where can we go that's a lot warmer than here.
Right. Well, in the markets that we're in, I mean, absolutely, there's been a lot of those people moving. I'm sorry, I got tongue tied, but there have been a mass exodus from a lot of the very highly populated. We know that a lot of that was driven by COVID and the ability to work from home and anywhere. So you can target areas that are more affordable. So, and there's certain criteria that make markets better for real estate investing, especially in the single family space. And you're looking at the affordability, your barrier to entry, your employment and job growth. You want places that are growing. You don't necessarily need to be in the highest populated areas, but you don't want an area where people are vacating. And that is, like you said, is the Southeast. And then you also have landlord tenant laws. And that's a very big factor when you're evaluating markets to put your money in for real estate, is that you want to pick markets and states that their local government is going to back the owner. And not saying that we don't have stringent tenant laws. We do have to abide by the landlord tenant laws set forth in Alabama, where you have to fix required repairs, et cetera, et cetera. However, there are protections that are in place to help the homeowner in the event of worst case scenario. You have someone that is no longer paying.
Right, right, right. And there are some states that are not friendly towards the homeowners in that situation. And well, I don't know if it goes by the state or the county, but I know Philadelphia, you do not want to be a owner renter there because they could sit there and not pay rent for months and months and they don't get evicted.
They don't. And a lot of times it's the states that have the certain laws that are statewide, but then even then the municipalities can have more diverse like ways to handle the entire process. So while
Hmm.
the state may say, hey, this is our process, this is our law, then you've got a certain county that says, hey, well, you have to go through this, or the sheriff has 80 days or 120 days before they're required to do a set out. And all of that does is just add time. And so that got in the weeds a little bit there, but yes, it is very important to make sure that you're targeting areas that
Hmm.
make sense
Hmm.
in regards to landlord tenant.
Yeah. And are you in all residential properties?
We do single family. We have some multifamily, but the highest we go is kind of the quadplex for a
Okay.
couple of different reasons. I think that there's a lot of opportunity out there for multifamily. And if you prefer multifamily, like I said, there's a lot of pros. One of the biggest benefits we see from the single family space is really just your exit point in the event that if you're buying the asset. So we're not like a REIT. You don't give money to us, and it's not like a pool. You own the asset, so you are buying the property as whole, and then we handle everything else. And hey, ideally, real estate does come with its risk, and I can talk a little bit about what some of those risks are or what we put in place to mitigate those risks. But in the event that something does happen and you need an exit strategy, your single family property, the pool of potential buyers is just a lot larger than your multifamily. If you own an apartment complex, just the person or the entity that you're going to be able to offload that to in the event of you need the capital, it's just a lot slimmer. Whereas if you own a single family home, you can sell that to an investor pool, you can sell that to an owner occupant. It's just a lot more broad. So I think that adds just another level of security when you're looking at just the different classes in real estate investing.
That's very interesting. So I was wondering, like, how do you cluster your homes? Do you try to get a couple in one neighborhood, or is it just like general area?
It's general area, and we're seeing that in the markets that we're targeting. So Birmingham is a really good example of what we would consider a commuter city, and that everything that is in a 30 to 45-mile radius is still, commutable. And that's because Birmingham doesn't have the population like as opposed to in LA, where you
Mm,
can live 5 miles down the road and it take you an hour to get there. That's just not simply the case. So a lot of what we're buying is in your suburban areas around the metro areas like in Birmingham.
okay.
And we tend to focus on, a lot of real estate gurus will talk about the class of neighborhood, and they'll say, is it a C class? Is it a B class? Is it an A class? Uh, I would say that the markets that we're buying in, even though they are spread and some of them are rural because we are in Alabama and that is a preferred place to reside in the Southeast, is like, hey, if you want more land, a lot of people that buy with us from Southern California, they're like, oh my gosh, you're so far out. I'm like, yes, but this is what people want. Like, this is ideal in this particular market. But um, if you're and even on the new construction side as well, when we do builds, we don't do full on uh, build to rent neighborhoods. We
Mm,
try to break that up and sell some to owner occupants and then some to investors. That way, you're not essentially competing with yourself. And that's what we're trying to avoid by targeting these specific areas. So I would say we're in a C plus to B plus, some A minus, but I don't really like that classification when you're looking at when you're evaluating real estate markets, because it's very, very subjective.
yeah.
And that what I've seen is that what I would consider a B plus market in Birmingham, Alabama, is what an A market might be in Memphis. It's just
Fair.
they're very subjective to the markets.
Mm,
And so what we do, how we evaluate, is we do it on a numerical scale, and we add value to, hey, like school zones, crime rates. We even take into account the neighborhood quality. How many owner occupant, what is your owner occupant tenant ratio? We try to shoot for that ideal 60/40. Like I said, on the new construction side, you want some of that home ownership in the neighborhoods that you're buying in. It kind of elevates the overall neighborhood and the market value. And then how many dilapidated properties can you see out of the front door? And that sounds very, very specific, but those are the things that we're taking into consideration when we're deciding what grade we're going to give a particular area, and then whether or not we're going to choose to purchase in that area.
No,
That was
that's
probably a
very
lot more information than
no,
you
but
were
it's
asking, but
really interesting. No, it's very, very interesting, and I think it's important for people to understand that because as you were saying that, it made a lot of sense because I'm thinking, okay, well, B plus in Alabama might be A minus in a different area, and I was thinking of like, I have one of my kids is in Boston for college, and that real estate is ridiculously expensive no, no matter where you are in Boston, but for what you would pay there, even where I live, which is expensive, it would be like A versus C the same way, even though it's a nice area. So I get that.
right.
I get that.
Yeah, it can be very, very subjective.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So if you have like somebody coming into this new, how do you, I guess, explain risk to them? Like what is the thing they should know about before entering some of this type of investment? Because as we know, investments look great until something bad
Hmm.
happens, and then you're like, oh crap, I didn't think about that.
Right. And I think that's the biggest hurdle that we have to overcome is that
Right.
one, the majority of our investors are buying these properties sight unseen. So we
Oh.
have to do as much due diligence as possible and be as transparent as possible to make our investors feel comfortable when we're buying. Like we have professional photographers go out and take pictures of the property before we start the renovation. After we start the renovation, we're sharing home inspections, sewer scopes. We're doing all of that on the construction side. But when we have somebody that's coming to us and saying, hey, like, I'm concerned. My marketing director gets really frustrated with me because she says I'm too doom and gloom. But I want to share and be open with the potential risk. And that with any investment, whether it's real estate, whether you buy with Spartan or not with Spartan, I urge everyone to buy real estate, whether you do it with us or not. But looking at what that risk is going to be, it's going to be this very similar to assessing any kind. If it's a multifamily, if it's the stock market, et cetera, et cetera. So there's always going to be risks. Now, one of the biggest risks is like, hey, what happens on the property management side? And then what can happen on the construction renovation side? Were there renovations or was something wrong with the property post the sale that now you're responsible for? And now you've got negative cash flow because you have to go back in and replumb or
Mm,
rewire or it needs a new HVAC or what have you. So that's a very big risk. Another risk is on the property management side, in that this overall investment is still contingent on the performance of humans. Just like any other investment, the stock market, if you're investing in a company, it is still based on the overall performance of whoever is leading that company. And that's a really good comparison that I like to draw, is that it is the same across the board. And so that's going to carry a burden. Now, what does that look like? What is the potential for, like, let's say an eviction? Well, that's something that we track. We track absolutely everything. And unfortunately, I can get what is it, paralysis by analysis, and that
oh
we
yeah.
we tend to track a little bit too much. But I want to be able to tell investors, hey, on average, this is our eviction rate. So we have over 2,000 properties under management in all of our markets, and we average about a 2.8% eviction rate.
Wow.
So I can say now for you could come to us and buy a property and your tenant could move in. And in the third month, they could go into eviction. That's a real possibility. But knowing what our average portfolio and our average performance is puts that risk profile into kind of a bucket that up front. And we
Right.
can share that. We share the maintenance ratio. Now, one thing that we are doing, like if you wanted to go with a turnkey company and you wanted to look at Spartan, and again, hey, it's if you want to invest, you want to do it on your own, what have you, I would still recommend you do the same things. Is that when we're buying the property and assessing what to do with it on the renovation side, we ask ourselves three questions. We call them our three M's. And will it drive down the long term maintenance of the property? Is it a safety must? And will a tenant pay more for it? And if it fits in those criterias, we're going to do it. So if the roof is older than 5 years old, we're going to put a new roof on it. If the HVAC is older than 5 years, we're putting a new HVAC in it. We get sewer scopes and septic inspections. If there's anything wrong that shows up there, we're replacing those. And then we're doing electrical upgrades if needed. Obviously, no knob tube, cloth wiring, any of that is getting replaced. Absolutely. But in making sure that all of the boxes are 200 amps. So we're doing the things that are going to keep the long-term maintenance of the property down as much as possible.
Yeah, that's great.
And again, that's not to say that I've had this happen. I've had an HVAC get struck by lightning and the investor had to buy a new HVAC. That is an act of God. I can't,
Yeah.
that is just part of it.
Yep.
But we're still checking the boxes to try to limit that. And we also offer warranties on the work. So if you've got 90 days after the tenant moves in, and anything that shows up that's even outside of what the work that we did, we're going to go in and handle that.
Okay.
Also, what we found is that those investors that come to real estate investing and want to do the single family, if they're doing a toe dip and they're like, I'm just going to buy one and I'm going to see how it goes. Now, this is a small pool, but we still wanted to cater to those investors. They'll do a toe dip, buy one property. And if everything goes really well with that one property, they come back and buy more. And that's about 70% of those investors are our repeat investors. They're coming back to buying us. But what we saw is that if anything happened within that first 12 months, not only did the investors not want to come back and buy, but it scared them from real estate in general. And that we're circling back after a couple of years and like, no, I haven't bought anything else, whether it be with us or not. And so though that kind of made us want to invest more in the first 12 months in the event. So we also offer a 12-month rent guarantee, in that if your property is not leased in the first 30 days after you own it, then we start paying your rent.
Oh, wow.
And that's, yeah, so that's a really big hit to our bottom line. So we are 100% incentivized to make sure your property gets leased. We have about, it's right now it's a little bit higher. We're at 32 days. So we average 32 days to deposit. Right now, we're getting into slow season. The first 6 months of the year, we average anywhere from like 27, 28 days to deposit. As tax season is usually when we spike and rent the most properties. But we have seen that tick up a little bit. And of all of the properties that we have sold this year, which is almost 200, we are paying rent on 3. So just to kind of say, I don't want anybody to make the assumptions like, well, you're just doing that because we're not getting the properties leased. No, we definitely want the properties leased because we don't want to have to pay that. We don't want to have to pay that rent. But we understand that a lot of times we're the first step into investing in real estate, and we want to make sure that it's as smooth as possible because that's how much we believe in the process. Myself included, the other owners in the company, we are buying real estate as well and stocking our portfolio. So it's definitely something that we practice what we preach.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if people want to learn more about you and what you're doing, where would they go find that information at?
Well, you just check us out on SpartanInvest.com. And there's way too much information on there, just so you know. There's a lot of it. There's investor guides. There's a breakdown of our zip codes and why we target those specific zip codes. So it can get really in the weeds if you're on a long flight and you're just really bored and you want to read that. We also have a podcast. It's called On the House with Spartan Invest. This is just a tool to break down. It's ad free. So it's just, we do it internally to take a dive into all of our processes. So if you wanted to know, hey, how do we evaluate and purchase a property? We have 3 episodes on just our acquisition process. Or if you're like, well, how do you handle when a tenant moves from a property? We have a couple of episodes on just that. So we have guests on there that will talk about some things pertaining to real estate, but a lot of times it is just us talking about our processes, why we do things the way that we do them, our markets, what's beneficial about our markets. It's really just from an educational standpoint. So if you just want to learn a little bit more, I would highly recommend checking out the podcast.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let me shift gears and ask you, what has been maybe a challenge, being a professional woman, what have been a challenge that challenge or challenges that you have faced?
Well, that is a very long list,
I
just full
know.
disclosure.
Loaded question. Loaded
It
question.
is a loaded question, yes. Well, real estate investing and construction and new construction property management, it is an extremely male-dominated industry.
Okay.
So that is a hurdle in and of itself. And there's not a lot of female-led turnkey companies. In fact, the number of full service turnkey companies in the country, there's probably five
Oh,
that
wow.
do what we do exactly at our scale. There's more than that across the board, but at the volume with which we do, there's probably right at five, and none of them are ran or have a strong female leadership. So that's a hurdle in and of itself, is to be in a space where it's not necessarily as common.
Right.
We've seen that change some over the last 5 to 7 years, which has been fantastic. I love it. Gosh, some of the challenges. I would also say I get asked the question a lot, like how do you balance? How do you balance your home life and your work life? And again, I think a big challenge is that it's that I get asked that question a lot, and nobody asks men that question. That's not a
No,
thing. And that's a
no.
pretty common question that I get. They're like, how do you do everything? It's like, well, I kind of do it the same way that you do it. It's the same situation. My family dynamic is very different, especially in the South, in that my husband is a stay-at-home husband, and so that again provide some challenges that we have to kind of navigate a little bit. But in regards to kind of doing all of the things, it's also about cutting back on what are my non-essentials. And what I mean by that is at times there's going to be requirements that I'm going to have to work late. I can't make all of the, or I choose not to make all of the events, all of the, like, hey, we're going to go get cocktails and we're going to network and da da da. And it's like, hey, I limit those. Like, I'm going to do one a month.
Right.
And that's kind of what I limit at, to make sure that I can check other boxes. That also has been challenging, because I'm not as present in some of those situations. But to me, it's I've got to find that happy medium, and that's just been a workaround for me. I,
Yeah.
I I hope that answered your question,
Yeah,
because
yeah, no,
it's there's
more than fair, more than fair, and that's a good point that people don't usually ask men how they balance it. They just only
no,
ask
never,
women.
no,
Interesting.
no, no, no,
Never
no.
thought
It's
never thought of that, but that's absolutely true. All right, so let's get in a time machine and talk about your vision of retirement.
So, like I said, as far as practicing what you preach, and that me and my husband are doing exactly what Spartan offers other people to do, and the ability to buy properties and have them managed and receive that passive income. Now, we have set up our retirement, and that we know how much we want to make passively a month. And we know in order to do that, we have to pay off a property and buy a property every year. And so that's kind of been we want to make sure we're checking those boxes. So we do that every single year to make sure that we're going to get to, by the time we kind of set a goal of like 55, to be able to walk away. Not necessarily that I know that I'm going to,
But just to
but
have the ability to say, I can.
I can.
It's
And I
it's a powerful statement.
absolutely, absolutely. And again, if you are wanting that kind of exit strategy, there are other ways to do that outside of real estate. And if real estate is your chosen vehicle, then there's many, many opportunities that you can do to generate that passive income. But it's any income that you can sustain while you sleep. And I think that
Mhm.
that's really the biggest box check for retirement. Now, yes, I'm checking boxes on 401ks and 529s for the kids' college funds and stuff like that, but you're also so very restricted on how much you can put back. And with the rate of inflation and what you can, it has not caught up to what you can put back versus what you might need.
Mhm.
And so that's been something that you also have to take into consideration, is that you've got to be able to generate enough income and know that that income is going to sustain you in 10 years or 20 years. And then even factoring in, what if you have another inflation spike, which we will, because, you know,
Mhm.
the economy, it's cyclical. It'll go up, it'll come down, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. Well, so I think we should have an action item. I'm trying to think of the action item. I love the talk about passive income, because I always talk about like how your accounts, when you're building them up pre-retirement, and then when you're retired, I like to say that, you want the portfolio to squeeze income out. So that's your passive income. But I think the action item is to look at diversifying that passive
Yes.
income, balance that out. Do you have a portfolio, an investment portfolio? Yes. Do you have a real estate portfolio that could do that for you? Yes. What are the other options for you to create that, income stream when you're in retirement, so that you can be able to say, well, I want to continue working versus I have
I
to
have to.
continue working. It's two very different statements.
It is very different. And the sad fact is that the majority of people out there are not thinking about retirement.
No.
And I think what we often see is people are coming to us too late. So if there's any action item that I can leave or say, is that despite whatever you want to invest in to diversify, start now, start yesterday, talk to your children about it. One of my favorite things is going to real estate conferences and having teenagers come up, and they're like, hey, they're here with their parents. And I met a girl, she was 14 years old, and she had saved up money, and she had put all of the money that she had, and her father helped her out, but she had put all of the money in that she had been saving into helping him buy one of the properties that he had. And so a small stipend of that rental income she was getting and putting aside. And she was 14 years old. And I was just like,
Beautiful.
I mean, you're the dream. I was so
Yeah.
excited about that, because so many times we have people that come to us that are like, hey, I want to retire in 5 years. Let's go. I want to buy some real estate. And it's like, man, real estate is a long game. It is a marathon. It is not a sprint. There are
Right.
so many benefits that come from buying real estate, but you really gain the majority of them by buying and holding them. And so a lot of times 5 years, that's hard to do. That's really
Mhm.
hard to do, because especially if you finance the properties, you're just now out of the interest payments, or even if that, in 5 years.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of one of those things that I would really stress, is that starting early, knowing kind of your goal, and finding as you can. But yes, start as soon as possible.
Awesome. Awesome. Always start as early as you possibly can. Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a joy to learn all about what you're doing in real estate. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Anytime. And also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. Again, I'm Regina McCann-Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management. My website is forgewealth.com. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube at Forge Wealth, and on LinkedIn, Regina McCann-Hess. Go make it a great day. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Women in Wealth podcast. You can watch the founders video I created for you to learn more about me and how I can guide you towards your financial independence at www.forgewealth.com. The information in this podcast is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration the listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, and SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Forge Wealth Management are separate entities from the LPL Financial. Our show guests and their companies are not affiliated with nor endorsed by LPL Financial, Private Advisor Group, or Forge Wealth Management.